If you blinked this past weekend, you might have just missed a political and judicial earthquake. We often talk about the slow, grinding wheels of the justice system and the predictable, poll-tested nature of modern political campaigns. But every once in a while, a single 48-hour window completely shatters the status quo. What happened this weekend isn't just a news cycle blip. It is a fundamental rewiring of the board that is going to dictate the terms of the upcoming midterm elections, and by extension, the general election that follows. We are looking at a landscape where the rules of engagement were essentially rewritten overnight.
That is not an overstatement in the slightest. What we witnessed was a rare convergence of judicial intervention and political volatility. On Friday night, we saw a sudden, sweeping federal court injunction regarding digital campaign finance tracing a ruling that essentially forces immediate, unprecedented transparency on dark money PACs right on the eve of the midterms. And then, as if the political war rooms weren't already in full panic mode, Sunday morning delivered the abrupt and completely unexpected resignation of a key swing state governor, citing an unfolding federal probe. You put those two events together, and the entire electoral calculus for the next 4 years has been thrown into absolute chaos.
It really is like someone walked into a crowded, dimly lit nightclub and suddenly flipped on the fluorescent lights. Everyone is scrambling. Let's start with that Friday night judicial ruling, because the implications there are staggering. For years, we've seen campaigns operate in this murky gray area of digital shell companies and untraceable ad spends. Now, a federal judge has effectively said that the public has a right to know exactly whose wallet is funding the attack ads on their screens, and they have to know it before they cast their ballots next month. How does a ruling of that magnitude dropping at the 11th hour actually play out on the ground for these midterm candidates?
It is absolute logistical and strategic terror for campaign managers. Think about it. You have hundreds of millions of dollars sitting in these opaque political action committees, ready to be deployed for the final midterm sprint. Suddenly, this injunction hits. If these organizations want to spend that money, they have to immediately disclose their donor lists, which include massive corporate entities and high-net-worth individuals who were promised absolute anonymity. So, these PACs are faced with a brutal choice. Do they freeze their spending and leave their candidates completely defenseless in the final weeks? Or do they open their books and risk a massive public backlash against their donors? We are already seeing major ad buys being pulled in critical battleground districts. It completely levels the playing field for grassroots candidates who rely on small-dollar, transparent donations.
Which is a fascinating paradox, isn't it? A highly complex, elite judicial decision ends up empowering the most localized, grassroots level of democracy. But it also creates a massive vacuum. If the big money suddenly goes quiet, the narrative is no longer being bought and paid for by the highest bidder. It forces candidates to actually speak to the voters, which is a novel concept these days. But let's add the second piece of this weekend's puzzle. Sunday's gubernatorial resignation in a state that is arguably the most critical firewall for the general election. This wasn't just a retirement. This was a sudden exit under the shadow of a federal probe. How does that localized political explosion send a shockwave all the way to the top of the general election ticket?
It nationalizes a local crisis instantly. That specific state was supposed to be the anchor for the incumbent party's general election strategy. The governor who just resigned was the chief surrogate, the fundraiser-in-chief, and the logistical mastermind for delivering those electoral votes. With that governor gone, and a relatively untested lieutenant governor stepping in amidst a massive scandal, the opposition party is already smelling blood in the water. They are going to pour every resource they have, at least, the resources they can still legally spend after Friday's court ruling, into flipping that state's legislature in the midterms. If they succeed, they control the voting apparatus and the district maps heading into the general election. The entire national map has tilted based on one resignation.
Ah, it is a domino effect in its purest form. And it brings up a really crucial point about how we consume and analyze these events. We are watching the tactical maneuvers, the legal battles, and the political fallout happen in real time. Unpacking a weekend like this, finding the signal through the absolute deafening noise, is exactly why we built this platform.
Absolutely. And for those who might be tuning in for the first time, The New Sentinel is a podcast dedicated to providing in-depth discussions and deep dives into a wide array of topics.
Exactly. From the glitz and glamour of pop culture to the strategic intricacies of military operations, we cover it all. Each episode is thoughtfully crafted to offer listeners a comprehensive understanding of the subject matter, featuring expert interviews, detailed analysis, and engaging storytelling.
Whether you're a pop culture enthusiast or someone with a keen interest in global security and political strategy, The New Sentinel has something for everyone. We want this to be a place where you don't just hear the news, but you actually understand the mechanics behind it.
So make sure to tune in, comment, share, and like to stay informed and entertained. And if you are a company looking to reach a smart, highly engaged audience, contact claebede@yahoo.com to advertise with us. We love bringing new partners into these conversations.
Getting back to the conversation, though, there is a deeper layer to this weekend's events that we have to address. We've talked about the mechanics, the money freezing, the map shifting, but what about the psychological impact on the electorate? We are looking at a voting public that is already incredibly cynical about the judicial system and the political establishment. When a federal judge changes the rules of the game right before kickoff, and a powerful governor vanishes into the night under federal investigation, does this energize voters to demand accountability, or does it just push them further into apathy?
That is the million-dollar question, and it borders on the philosophical. Are we witnessing the system self-correcting, or are we watching it buckle under its own weight? On one hand, the judicial ruling on dark money is a massive victory for democratic transparency. It is the system working exactly as it should, protecting the integrity of the vote. On the other hand, the timing is so disruptive that it fuels conspiracy theories. And when you pair that with a corrupt political figure falling from grace, it confirms every dark suspicion the average voter has about the people in power. It feels like we are asking the public to simultaneously trust the justice system to save the election, while acknowledging that the political system is deeply broken.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. It is a cognitive dissonance that we are asking voters to carry to the ballot box. And history tells us that when voters are confused or overwhelmed by scandal and sudden legal shifts, they tend to vote defensively. They don't vote for a vision of the future. They vote to punish whoever they blame for the chaos of the present. For the midterms, this means we are likely going to see a highly volatile, grievance-driven turnout. The candidates who can successfully weaponize this weekend's events, the ones who can point to the empty governor's mansion and the frozen dark money accounts and say, "I am the antidote to this madness." Those are the candidates who will sweep the midterms.
Which sets up a terrifyingly high-stakes general election. If the midterms become a referendum on this weekend's chaos, the winners will take office with a mandate for radical disruption. They aren't going to be interested in bipartisan consensus. They are going to be interested in dismantling whatever structures allowed the dark money and the political corruption to exist in the first place. The general election won't just be about competing policies. It will be a fundamental debate about the legitimacy of our institutions.
Precisely. The general election will be fought on the scarred battlefield that this weekend just created. The candidates running for the highest office will have to navigate a landscape where campaign finance has been radically altered, where key swing states are under new, untested leadership, and where the judiciary has proven it is not afraid to drop a bomb on the political process at the last possible second. It requires a completely different type of candidate. The traditional, poll-tested, carefully scripted politician cannot survive in an environment this unpredictable. It favors the agile, the aggressive, and frankly, the opportunistic.
Hmm. It is a harsh reality, but an undeniable one. We are moving out of the era of predictable political theater and into an era of raw, unscripted institutional combat. The events of this past weekend weren't just headlines, they were the opening salvos of a new political epoch. As we look toward the midterms in a few short weeks, and the general election looming on the horizon, the only certainty is that the old playbooks are completely useless. The question we have to ask ourselves now isn't just who is going to win under these new rules, but what kind of country we will be when the dust finally settles. Will this forced transparency and political upheaval lead to a more honest republic? Or will it just teach the next generation of power brokers how to hide their tracks a little better? It is something we will be watching, analyzing, and dissecting every step of the way.